So for about 16 years, I was pretty safely a PowerPoint technician. And if you want to get a group of folks, especially right after breakfast, to just glaze over like the donuts, PowerPoints. So we'll kind of just have a little bit of a discussion here. I got 7 things I do want to cover. I thought I'd cover kind of the history of Clarkson Grain, a little bit around merchants versus missionaries. As we think about marketing, how many people are thinking about getting into organics? So we got a few folks. What do we as Clarkson Grain look for in a grower? What are we really looking for? Talk a little bit about the market versus the markets. Which markets are demanding attention? Talk a little bit about transitional, and then gaze at the end of the day, gaze into our crystal ball just a little bit. So I don't know how to get that one off. It's a good slide. Nothing against your slide there, Ryan. There we go. So a little bit of the history around Clarkson Grain. I'm Ken Dallmier. I'm the president and COO of Clarkson Grain. We've been putting together supply chains for some of the most demanding companies in the world. Our ingredients are products that are sold on 6 continents and in most of the local grocery stores. If you look at a bag of organic chips or organic cereals or everything from corn chips to baby formula, those things are brought through an ingredient that Clarkson Grain produces. The important thing I think about is our clients provide market distinctions based upon their customers' social values. And it's a very different dynamic than what a standard consumer packaged good or a CPG company does. We are looking to supply that supply chain for those clients, because their customers in turn are demanding transparency, quality, and it kind of comes down to a lack of pesticides, a lack of certain types of chemicals, which are really creating a demand pull rather than a supply push. And that's the mindset, that's the paradigm shift that we'd like to talk about. If you've heard me talk in the past, my first line that everybody tends to write down is, we are merchants. We are not missionaries. What does that mean? Since 1974, Clarkson has provided new markets for growers. In '94, we sold our first organic, it happened to be a ship's hold of organic grain to Japan. That was before there was such a thing as standardized organic. Currently, our portfolio is about 80-20 non-GM to organic on soy, about 70-30 on corn. We are merchants. We don't claim that one method of production is better than another. It's not closer to God than another. We don't bolt on things to it unless kind of our customer is looking for. So what we try to do is we try to provide the best supply chain for the market distinctions that our customer is trying to accomplish. So again, we are creating that demand pull rather than a commodity supply push, and that's exciting. So there were about a third of you are kind of new, kind of investigating this market. So I thought it may be interesting. What do we look for as a grower? What do your suppliers look for as a grower? Number one, whenever we have a conversation with a new grower, whether it's at Cerro Gordo or at a place like this, we want to understand if that new grower has a customer focus to help our clients. So if they start out the conversation with, what's my premium going to be? Oh, do you really have to have it then? That sort of thing. They're not our folks, just not. If they start the question around, start the conversation around, what can I do to help you produce, to help you market my grain, or to help you do these types of things? That's a very different mindset. That's the folks that we're trying to look for. We want to make sure that how can that grower help support market distinction? And one of the big ways that we think about it is record keeping. You've heard a lot about detail. Chemical applications, or lack thereof. Certificates, whether it be an organic certificate, if you have different other certifications that you're looking for. In general, this whole market is much more about relationships rather than transactions. And it's very, very different than what most Americans think about. We go into something and it's a transaction. I have this, you want that, here's the price, on your bank. In our world, it is very much a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year time frame that we want to establish, not only with our downstream customers, but with our growers. Somebody new calls up and says, I have 5 truckloads of organic corn and I want to sell them to you tomorrow. Instantly my flags are just, okay, who are you, what have you got, what's the deal? But if I know who you are and the quality that you produce and that sort of thing, it becomes a relationship. In many cases, especially for our Japanese clients, they like to come see your farm. You need to be kind of open to that. Whether they be Japanese or European, South Asian, or et cetera, or even U.S. domestic. They like to come see your farm. Is it clean? Is it professional? Have you got stuff laying around? What's the equipment look like? That sort of thing. Are they going to be proud to put their brand on your farm? Quality of the product. Food, of course, draws the best premium. But now pet food has about the same quality standards as human food. That's the market. That's your fish. Identity preservation, you need to have on-farm storage. If you don't have it, please don't put it in those damn bags. We are destined for disappointment for people who've got great giant white sausages. You open those things up, stand back in many cases. So especially the winter that we've had, contrary to what it's like outside, the highly fluctuating temperatures are just death on those things. They're doing what they're designed to do. They're making silage. Flexibility. Think about different varieties. If your mindset and your metric for success is, I produce 80 bushel beans, and I'm successful because I produce 80 bushel beans, and I do it this year and next year and next year and next year and next year, this is not your deal. Be flexible in your variety, be flexible in your logistics, be flexible in the varieties and delivery times that you're thinking about. If all you're interested in yield, this is not a yield game. This is a net income game. We are merchants. We're not missionaries. This is about income. Okay, having set that aside. Let's talk a little bit about the capital M market versus the lowercase m, the markets. Okay? The market versus the markets. The markets, I had a kind of an epiphany this morning, so I wrote it down. The markets are a global process setting prices of commodities based upon global supply and demand. And basically, they're irrelevant to this conversation. That's kind of the point, right? A market is what customers are demanding. We must, the whole point of this conversation is we must concentrate on a market and largely ignore the markets in order to maximize net income. And with a few notable exceptions in the room, we're in a business to maximize net income by satisfying what those markets are. So what markets are demanding attention? As Ryan, I think, really stated well and had some good data on, the organic grain for food continues to rise in certain sectors. Those are salty snacks. Go down the chip aisle, you start to see more organic things. The cool part is, if you go down the chip aisle, you probably see Clarkson Grain. That kind of underneath the hood. That's the fun bit about my job. Salty snacks, clean label convenience foods are starting to go up. Other organic sectors seem to be maturing in demand. Are they going down? No, but that trajectory is starting to level. Cereals, grains, etc. But the direct grain demand seems to be maturing, but the organic protein demand is growing by 10% or greater. That's poultry. People don't want to eat the grain, but we do love our poultry. We love the protein. So think about it shifting. This is the flexibility bit. How are you going to go from thinking about grain to thinking about food and going down that price? So these things, I think, provide price stability, and that's what we've seen. We don't really look for the price for organic grains to change a whole lot. 2019 crop out of 2018 crop. And we also see one of the things, the imports, I think, are very important thing to consider. We're seeing a premium based upon U.S. domestic production. And what that is, it's the first time we're able to monetize the cost and the value of a U.S. company's brand. So if a poultry farmer gets in the newspaper for buying, feeding, selling grains that turn out to be not organic, that hits their brand. USDA NOP now will have product recall authority as opposed to just stop sale authority. That hits things really quite a bit. It's a big shift change. Okay, number 6 out of 7. That way Aaron's like, okay, he's going to quit here. Okay, number 6 out of 7. Certified transitional grain. Certified transitional grain right now adds very little value. That's what the market is saying. The market wants organic products, but the market does not think in supply chains. It wants you over here, but it really doesn't care how you get there. It figures that's not my deal. Why? Because I've got other people doing it, right? That's not my deal. So, luckily, for the past year, past 2 years, and I think looking out in the next 2 years, export markets for non-GMO grains, including meals, are providing kind of an unexpected and stable premium. Soybeans, non-GMO soybeans, in that $1 to $1.40 range. Corn can go anywhere from a dime to 50 cents, depending upon where you are. Will that put wheels under a lot of it? If take advantage of the market that's there. You know, if you're in central Wisconsin, will you truck it down to central Illinois? Probably not. But look around, they are there, and start to think about it. Think about marketing transitional products in terms of what the customer understands. So if you go back to where our table is, and kind of going back to what Joel was saying, and Ryan as well, we are putting together our first consumer product, which is sunflower birdseed. And it is a transitional product, but we don't call it anything like that. We just say there's no pesticides. Because the market, the people who are buying it, don't understand what that transitional part is, and they've made it quite clear that that's not their deal. But the market distinction is they don't want pesticides, and they certainly don't want the pesticides on, for their animals. They don't want it for their children, in that order. And so the question is, think about it. You buy a bag of dog food, and you buy a bag, holy smoke, have you bought a bag of dog food lately? So dogs, cats, goats, chickens, etc., and kids, right? What do? You get your kid a candy bar, have a candy bar. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop Prairie Melody birdseed, and as a direct to consumer, how do you promote that transition program? Available on Amazon, in case anybody's interested. Okay, last topic. Clarkson Grain's crystal ball. The market, we see, for food and feed will keep the price of organic reasonably stable, I think, through 2019. That is corn, soy, basically a corn, soy play. Organic wheat, if you can do the quality bits, you're in good shape. Otherwise, you're just straight feed wheat. There's some feed wheat in there, organic feed wheat. But that's kind of hit and miss. There's an increased number of growers of organic, obviously. And that means that you need, if you're not already pre-contracted for your organic acres in 2019, you need to do it now. There is starting to be competition for contracts, which is a shift from 2 years ago where we were looking for growers. We had contracts sitting out looking for growers. Now that's starting to get to be a little bit more in balance. So you can't step back and say, yeah, I'll do that in March. Things are starting to get to be, I need to do that in November and going forward. Concentrate on quality, concentrate on relationships. Here's my other epiphany that we struggle with a lot. Old crap equipment gives crap quality. Learn how to set your combine. Please learn how to set your combine. Consider the vertical integration to drive net income and diversity. In the OGRAIN Idea Network, Dave Bishop, which I don't know if he's in this one or he just walked out. Dave kind of popped out the idea of a cooperative. I think it's interesting, and that's what our granddads did. So think about as marginal return of a base input starts to go down, think about vertical integration. That's why our granddads raised animals. That's why people distilled whiskey from corn. Can't make a whole lot of money on corn, but you could on bootlegging. Think about it, think about it. Last thing I'll touch on is there's been a lot of hype around hemp and other savior crops. Not savory, savior. They make me a little nervous because those of us of an age remember a lot of other savior crops. where we got ahead of the infrastructure. We got ahead of supply and we wound up with gross oversupply. We didn't think it through all the way through. If you drive around Iowa, you see a whole lot of weed issues from the 1930s that are still in the ditches. How are we going to get rid of, if it gets away with it, gets away from us, how are we going to deal with that? I just want us to make sure that on the hemp side, that we're considering all of the headache without the buzz on that point. So some of the younger kids that get that, and those of us who kind of went through the 60s figure that one out. So we want to make sure, and I think that's a lot of good. That's kind of a good piece of advice for if you're thinking about organics. Make sure there are headaches, there are management. It's the only system that I know of that pays you for extra management. You can't just go out and say, oh no, I've got a weed, let's go spray it. You got to figure out how to deal with it. So, but make sure you've got, you got all the headaches covered without the buzz. And I'll be here most of the day.